The Watcher in Apartment 7. The apartment smelled faintly of rain and dust, shadows curling unnaturally across the walls. A light flickered in the hallway, stretching shapes that seemed alive, waiting for someone who should never notice. Footsteps echoed softly, uneven and deliberate. The sound lingered just beyond hearing, brushing against corners and furniture. Something moved in the periphery, patient, observing every small motion without being seen. The living room seemed to pulse subtly as shadows lengthened along the carpet, stretching toward corners that held impossible angles, twisting reality in ways that made familiar spaces feel alien. A chill crept across the floor, curling around ankles and rising with deliberate weight. Each breath felt heavier, as though the air itself had become aware of every step. The security camera flickered once, revealing a dark figure crouched unnaturally in the corner. Limbs bent at impossible angles, edges blurred, waiting silently while the camera struggled to capture its form. Objects shifted without sound. A mug teetered on the edge of the counter and fell. Papers rustled, though no breeze existed, the apartment rearranging itself as if it were alive. The hallway light trembled and flickered, revealing a shadow that paused mid-motion. Its form tilted almost human, yet angles betrayed something impossible, lingering long enough to etch unease into memory. The temperature dropped sharply, breath forming mist. Walls seemed to hum faintly, vibrating in quiet rhythm with something unseen, pressing awareness into the chest with weight that could not be ignored. Footsteps echoed across the empty ceiling, slow and deliberate. They pressed against the mind as if cataloging each movement, an invisible presence marking time and space with unnatural precision. The glass reflected an image that lagged slightly, movement delayed. Shadows twisted against the figure's outline, bending reality, creating a reflection that existed independently from what could be touched. A door rattled softly, unlatched without touch. Each tremor reverberated with deliberate rhythm, echoing across empty spaces and leaving a trace of anticipation thick in the air. Light flickered again, revealing objects subtly out of place. Chairs angled strangely, books shifted as if drawn toward shadows, each motion deliberate, each change pressing awareness into corners of the apartment. Whispers moved through the walls, faint and unintelligible, threading into the ears and heartbeat. They were present without source, brushing against consciousness and leaving the skin tingling with distant unease. Floorboards groaned beneath weight that could not belong to any human, stretching hallways and compressing doorways. The apartment bent subtly, reshaping familiar spaces into corridors that should not exist. Candles trembled without wind, flames dancing against shadows that crouched in corners, vanishing before full notice, leaving only tension and the pulse of unease against the walls. The monitor buzzed with static, showing a figure that should not exist. Limbs bent impossibly, head twisting in quiet patience, observing without motion, waiting for attention with deliberate calculation. Shadows lingered beneath furniture, stretching like living shapes. Each angle suggested intent. Every curve seemed precise, the apartment alive with consciousness that did not belong to human eyes. Hallways narrowed subtly as footsteps approached, brushing unseen walls. Spaces warped to accommodate the presence, guiding movement toward corners where sight could not follow, leaving the mind unsettled. A mirror distorted the hallway further, reflections bending unnaturally. Shadows nested within shadows, overlapping reality with perception, twisting dimensions into layers of observation, aware of everything without appearing real. Whispered breaths circled the apartment, low and deliberate, threading through cracks and gaps. They pressed against the senses, intimate yet invisible, impossible to locate but undeniably present. Objects tilted, swayed, and fell in sequence, orchestrated chaos subtle enough to unsettle, precise enough to feel intentional. The apartment itself seemed to record movements in silence. Shadows moved independently, following without touching, brushing without contact, mimicking motion but separate, patient, stretching toward windows and doors that offered no escape from observation. Floorboards creaked with unearthly rhythm, too slow for human pacing, too precise for randomness. Each sound marked awareness, cataloging every motion with patient vigilance. A handprint appeared on glass, wet and evaporating too quickly to exist naturally. Its shape hinted at something impossible, bending substance and form, a sign of observation rather than intrusion. The figure lingered, flickering at the edge of perception. It did not advance, did not retreat, remaining poised in corners, a presence felt but never fully seen. A mirror distorted angles further, stretching shadows into impossible shapes. Reflections layered within reflections, bending light and perception, leaving the mind unsure of what could truly exist. Dawn light crept softly through curtains, angles softened, yet presence remained. The apartment exhaled subtly, returning calm without erasing the imprint of observation, lingering quietly in corners and walls. Silence settled, but tension remained. Every object, every shadow held memory of attention. Corners whispered evidence of patience, and spaces remained altered subtly, unbroken by human understanding. The final glimpse of the figure retreated into darkness, leaving outlines that pulsed faintly in peripheral vision. The apartment exhaled, quiet yet never empty, waiting for nightfall to resume its watch. Air smelled faintly acrid, damp with unease. Shadows withdrew, yet corners retained memory of presence. Every detail recorded by eyes unseen, the apartment aware and patient in ways impossible to measure. Light twisted on surfaces unevenly, revealing subtle movements where none existed. Tendrils of shadow curled quietly, reshaping perception, leaving the familiar unfamiliar and every glance uncertain. Morning filtered fully into the apartment. The weight of observation receded, but remained, invisible, patient, lingering indefinitely, marking space with quiet presence that would not leave, unseen yet undeniable. The package that shouldn't exist. The package arrived on the doorstep, unmarked, its surface slick and cold. Rain glistened on the wrapping, and something about it seemed alive, pressing against the concrete as if it waited. I brought it inside, the air growing heavier with every step. Shadows lengthened across the walls, curling toward the package like tendrils, brushing against corners I thought I had memorized. The wrapping pulsed faintly under my fingertips, subtle vibrations moving through the cardboard. A smell, metallic and damp, rose from it, unsettling and familiar, though I couldn't place where I had sensed it before. I set the package on the table. The room felt smaller, walls leaning inward. Shadows shifted independently, stretching toward the box, bending perception and drawing attention in ways that defied reason. A faint creak echoed from the ceiling. The apartment seemed to inhale, the air thickening as though every object was aware of the presence now contained in the package. The edges of the wrapping shifted subtly, corners curling and uncurling like soft fingers. The sensation was deliberate, patient, waiting for acknowledgement without revealing intent, teasing perception without confrontation. A chill rose from the floorboards. Every movement within the apartment felt heavier, slower, as though unseen eyes were cataloging every breath, every shift of balance or focus in the room. I leaned closer, the smell growing sharper, metallic and wet, pressing against the nose and teeth with a weight that unsettled without touching, brushing awareness into every nerve. Shadows near the windows deepened, curling toward the table, reaching across surfaces without contact. The room pulsed subtly, alive with tension, stretching space just enough to unsettle recognition. The floorboards groaned beneath invisible weight. Each creak resonated, measured and deliberate, marking presence, a rhythm meant to unnerve and trace movements even without sight. A faint glow emerged from a small tear in the wrapping. Shapes writhed within, twisting unnaturally, bending and stretching, almost alive, almost sentient, teasing the eyes without fully revealing themselves. Objects in the room shifted imperceptibly. A chair leaned, papers slid toward shadows, the air vibrating with subtle changes, as if the apartment itself were preparing for attention. Whispers threaded through the walls, faint, distant, yet intimate, brushing against the mind and leaving tension in the chest, awareness of observation pressing through without form or voice. The light flickered above, revealing shadows curling along surfaces. Their angles contradicted natural lines, limbs bending in impossible ways, dancing with patience, measuring and cataloging movements in the quiet. The wrapping quivered as though breathing, each pulse deliberate, sending ripples across surfaces. Shadows leaned closer, brushing against corners, unseen and patient, stretching presence into every crevice of vision. Floorboards shifted again, subtle yet deliberate, as if the apartment itself were breathing along with the package, pulsing, aware, cataloging attention and echoing presence without need for observation. Reflections in windows warped, shapes stretching unnaturally, shadows nesting within shadows. Light bent, angles skewed, leaving a sense of movement where none existed, perception shifting subtly with each glance. The room grew heavier, air thickening. Each breath felt drawn through unseen hands, as though awareness brushed against skin, pressing into nerves without form, lingering quietly yet insistently. Objects tilted, fell, and swayed in subtle patterns. The package seemed to orchestrate them, a silent conductor bending reality, leaving perception unsettled without revealing direct action. Shadows moved independently, brushing surfaces without contact, following motion without approach, patient and deliberate, stretching toward doors and corners that offered no escape from attention. The glow inside the package pulsed faintly, shadows twisting against it. Shapes bent impossibly, twisting like smoke, present yet unseen, teasing observation without revealing intent or form. Whispers intensified, threading through cracks and corners, weaving awareness into perception. They pressed into the chest, brushing attention into every corner of the apartment, impossible to locate, yet undeniably present. A faint mark appeared on the tabletop, wet and evaporating too quickly to exist naturally. Its outline suggested impossible angles, subtle presence, evidence of observation rather than intrusion. The package pulsed with rhythm, almost as if alive. Shadows leaned closer, the apartment bending subtly, stretching and reshaping spaces, threading attention into every motion, watching patiently from the corners. Light flickered in the early morning, angles softening, yet presence remained. The apartment exhaled slightly, calm returning without erasing awareness, the package leaving imprints in shadows and air. Silence settled, tension lingering in every object, every angle. The apartment remained aware, corners whispering memory, every line and shadow pressing into awareness without form or reason. The final glow of the package faded into dullness. Shadows lingered, subtle and patient, stretching perception in corners, leaving the apartment alive with memory of presence even after absence. Air smelled damp and metallic, lingering unease pressing against skin. Every corner retained traces, shadows bent slightly, and awareness remained quietly, patiently, unbroken by human perception. Light shifted fully, morning filtering in. The weight receded yet remained, unseen yet undeniable, the apartment holding memory of the package and presence, patient, waiting for darkness to return. The shadows that waited in the hallway. The hallway stretched longer than memory allowed, light bending at the corners. Shadows pooled against the walls, shifting subtly, curling toward places where nothing should move, alive with quiet patience. A chill pressed against the floorboards, brushing ankles as though unseen fingers traced every step. Air trembled lightly, carrying faint echoes of movement from spaces just beyond vision. The apartment seemed to lean inward, the walls subtle, almost imperceptible. Each object tilted toward darkness, shadows stretching across furniture, brushing against surfaces in ways that felt deliberate and patient. A faint hiss threaded through the vents, soft and rhythmic. It pressed into awareness, brushing along nerves and teeth, a sound both distant and impossibly intimate in perception. The light above flickered, revealing shapes crouched low, limbs bent at angles that defied nature, hovering just beyond recognition, waiting silently, while perception strained against impossible geometry. Footsteps echoed upstairs, slow and precise, marking attention against the ceiling. They moved without source, a rhythm impossible for any living thing, yet undeniable to the senses. Shadows stretched across the carpet, pooling and folding along the edges. Each curve suggested intent, a quiet awareness that lingered without form, brushing against vision like whispered breath. Air grew heavier, pressing downward, curling around shoulders and neck. Every movement carried resistance, subtle but unmistakable, as though the apartment itself were observing, cataloging presence in patient silence. A reflection in the glass shimmered strangely, movements delayed, shadows bending independently. Light fractured in impossible ways, creating figures within figures, layering presence over the familiar without revealing it. Floorboards creaked, soft and deliberate. The sound pulsed through the room like a heartbeat, marking rhythm and attention in corners where shadows clustered, patient and precise. Objects tilted subtly, swayed, falling with careful timing. The apartment seemed orchestrated, aware of every motion, every glance, reshaping perception with silent choreography and deliberate attention. Whispers threaded along walls, unintelligible yet pressing, brushing along ears and nerves, weaving a narrative of presence that could be felt but never fully grasped or located. The hallway narrowed subtly, stretching and compressing. Shadows leaned inward, brushing edges of vision, the space bending around attention, guiding perception without direct interference, patient and unseen. A cold draft moved along the baseboards, curling upward. It whispered across surfaces and corners, tracing movement without weight, pressing awareness into the senses with subtle insistence. Shadows lingered beneath furniture, stretching impossibly. Limbs and shapes bent with quiet intent, teasing perception, brushing against surfaces without contact, the apartment alive with unseen observation. The ceiling light flickered violently, revealing twisting shapes. Limbs bent, shadows nested, angles impossible for human comprehension. The presence hovered just beyond reach, patient, watching, deliberate in its concealment. The floorboards groaned with weight, precise and impossible, echoing attention across surfaces and walls. Each sound layered memory into space, every creak a mark of unseen awareness. Reflections warped across windows, angles stretching and folding. Shadows nested within shadows, overlapping space, bending perception, creating layers of observation in a room that should have remained familiar. Air thickened, each breath pulled through unseen resistance. Tension pressed against nerves, rushing along every muscle, an invisible hand marking presence without form, leaving unease in its wake. Objects shifted, subtle but deliberate. A chair angled slightly, papers slid, small disturbances orchestrated, as though the apartment itself were shaping attention and presence without revealing intent. Shadows moved independently, brushing surfaces without contact, following without approach, lingering in corners and stretching along walls where escape seemed impossible, patient and deliberate. The temperature dropped, curling through the room, brushing against skin. Each step pressed awareness further, heightening tension, leaving the apartment thick with quiet observation, subtle yet undeniable. Whispers intensified, threading through cracks and corners, weaving presence into perception, pressing against consciousness without form, leaving only subtle marks of unseen attention lingering in every glance. A faint mark appeared on a table, wet and evaporating, suggesting impossible angles, bending form subtly, evidence of awareness rather than intrusion, leaving perception unsettled and uneasy. The shadows leaned closer, curling along surfaces, stretching toward light and doorways that offered no escape. Presence pulsed quietly, patient, observing every movement without interference, waiting for nightfall to deepen. Light began to soften at the windows, yet presence lingered. The apartment exhaled subtly, calm returning without erasing memory of observation, shadows bending still in corners and peripheries. Silence settled, tension lingering in every object, every angle. The apartment remained aware, corners whispering memory, every line, shadow, and stretch of space marked with quiet patience. The final outline of a shadow withdrew into darkness, yet traces pulsed faintly, lingering in peripheral perception. The apartment exhaled, patient, waiting for nightfall to return attention. Air smelled faintly acrid and damp. Shadows withdrew, but corners retained memory of presence, stretching perception subtly, invisible yet undeniable, leaving unease in every glance and step. Morning light filtered in fully, yet the weight remained. The apartment had changed subtly, holding memory of observation and patience, present and invisible, lingering until darkness returned once again.